Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky to episode of Worlds to Conquer, and we are going to dive into some amazing questions, comments, and feedback that I got when it comes to hiring an executive assistant or a virtual assistant. So I want to be real clear in terminology here. An executive assistant normally works exclusively for one executive. Generally, this is somebody that can work from home or work from anywhere, but you also have a physical presence with. So this might be somebody that comes down to your office every single day. This might be somebody that comes down once a week or once a month or a quarter meetup. A virtual assistant is just that, somebody that works 100% of the time remotely. Now, which one is more appropriate for you? That's for you to decide. I don't find it to be a prohibiting factor to find somebody that is virtual. For most of what I give my executive assistant to do, they can work from anywhere. As long as it is a country that isn't on the terrorist watch list, I really don't care if they're doing my tasks from Mexico or France, or maybe they're on the East Coast and I'm up here in Alaska. But every now and then there's a profound benefit of having your executive assistant be somebody that you see in person. So this year, as you guys know, right before Surge and our springtime, our spring is our biggest surge. Our surge is a time block period in which we do nothing but deliver massive value to clients by meeting with over 500 households during a 6-week block of time. Us Shalanskys, there are 3 Shalanskys that are advisors in our office. Our surge is about 4 weeks long, but most of the advisors in our office, they are at 6 weeks. And so during this time blocked period, in the spring is our busiest one. Why? Because people are gearing up for taxes. So they are massively giving your office all of the information that you requested for the last year because it's top of mind and it's most important for them to do. And they're already in the process of this hunting and gathering of information in their finances. So we love to tack on our spring surge right around tax time because it delivers the most amount of value to the client. Now, what that means for our team, though, is we are about to get inundated with paperwork, and all of that paperwork we have to do something with. So when we say at Shalansky & Associates, we are a comprehensive financial planning firm, that is not a marketing term that we are flippantly using. We ask the client for everything regarding their finances. I want to see it if it involves money. And once we get that data has to go somewhere. It has to live somewhere so we can produce value adds on a quarterly basis. Our data lives inside of Infinity. Infinity is our custom CRM that my brother Micah Shalansky and I have spent the last decade refining and really sculpting to be the most high-performing CRM possible for financial advisors. It gives all that information a place to live. It is our brain trust. So right before we kick off our busiest surge out of the year, we do a team retreat, and that is for spouses and family members. We all come up to Alaska and we spend 3 or 4 days kind of learning and playing together. Now, in my office, my executive assistant is in charge of coordinating all of the team retreat activities, details, and making sure that this is pulled off perfectly. And so her being physically present and coming down for that event, even though she doesn't live in Anchorage, is beautiful for the both of us. She did all the preparation, organization, got everything together. But when you're mobilizing 44 people is the total number that we had at this retreat, then that's a lot of moving parts as you get people together. What is the agenda? Do the spouses know the agenda? That was a huge one I had to have her help me with, because as the event was approaching, I started socializing with some of my team members' spouses that said, I hope to see you at the retreat. I'm not sure what the plan is. So even though we had spent all this time working with our team members, it was all scheduled on our calendars, everyone knew what was going to happen at the retreat, that information hadn't gotten conveyed over to the spouses and the family members members that were attending. And for me, that would be a massive fail if all of these team members and their spouses showed up and the spouses had no idea when the team member was supposed to be working, when we were getting together as groups, and when the free time was. So we had to come up with this 9-page agenda, and that outlined everything for everyone. So not once during the retreat did I have anyone question where they were supposed to be and when they were supposed to be there. Now, if you've attended a conference, how many times have you wandered around looking for a schedule and going, what's happening now? What's the next event? Do I go there? I've got to get with my spouse. I brought this on the trip. I need to carve out some time for that. We didn't have any of those kind of questions, because instead what my EA did was sit down with me and we took all of those thoughts that were circulating in my brain and we put it down on paper. And that meant when every single team member showed up at this retreat, upon check-in, they got a beautifully bound book that was given to their spouses. So it was literally written for their spouse and their family, and it broke down the events of the next 4 days and said, hey, listen, this is why we're doing this event. This is what's really important to us about doing these team style events, is that your team member, whoever you are in a relationship with, is about to go to a full court press. It is about to be intense for that team member over the next 6 to 8 weeks, because even though our surge is 4 weeks, most of our advisors' surges are 6 weeks within our office, that doesn't mean the team surge is 4 to 6 weeks. The relationship managers start 2 weeks before, and the operations team is going to be 2 weeks afterwards, working on everything, trying to catch up from all that dictation and all of those meetings that took place. This is an intense time. This is a time where I'm expecting them to be at their A game as well. And when that happens, I need to make sure that their spouses understand the significance of what we are doing and why we need them to be super supportive during the home time. So I love to let them know, why does it matter? What are we trying to accomplish? And then over the next 4 days, what does that look like? How long will somebody be in a session where, the team member is just with them before everyone can get back together? And so we really specified all of that. And then in addition to it, my team member arrived at the retreat place because we did it at a resort, and she had to be there a day in advance. She was there a day in advance so she could get all of the logistics that she had virtually worked on for months at a time really hammered out. She wanted to go up to the rooms, check and see where everyone was going to be. Were we on the same floor, different floors, towers? What does the restaurant look like? Where is everyone eating? Where's our meeting place? What is going to be the most sense for the leaders to get up and address the team? Where does that environment live? She also went above and beyond for her team, which means she also scheduled private skiing lessons and snowboarding lessons and massages and different treatments that you could do at this Nordic spa that they open. So she went above and beyond to make sure that regardless of activity, whatever you chose to participate in while you were at the resort, that you were accommodated for and taken care of. Now, in addition to creating a schedule and handing it out to everyone, which seems easy until you start designing it, because we included room maps and floors and what we were going to cover and what we weren't going to cover. Most of the resort excursion is on the Shelanskys. This is something we do to give back to our team members. However, there are times that we're not going to cover all of the costs. So one of the very first things I like to spell out for team members before the retreat, they know the financial expenses, and then I remind their spouses what we are covering during the retreat and what we aren't covering during the retreat. In fact, we did this so beautifully that my executive assistant's husband came up to me and said, hey, thank you for my welcome packet. This really helped set my expectations for the event. And did I see the dishwasher rule applied on page 1? And I had to laugh because, of course, I included the dishwasher rule. So what is the dishwasher rule? As my brother, Micah Shalansky, believe it or not, when you meet him in person, you won't believe it, but he does the majority of the dishes in his household, him and his son, Gabriel. But if a husband really does the dishes and the wife doesn't see them do the dishes, did the dishes get done? And so what he would do is every time he would load up the dishwasher, he would go around and say, hey, honey, honey, to my sister-in-law, I'm loading up the dishwasher. Do you have any dishes you want me to put inside the dishwasher? And so she would know that he was also helping in those household chores. So it's a good laugh, a good joke amongst us that sometimes we as financial advisors, we as human beings do a lot of things that we're not necessarily getting credit for. And if somebody doesn't know you're doing them, it doesn't matter. Now, I'm not talking about philanthropy. I'm talking about when it should matter for you most. So for example, when everyone checked into the resort and they got their welcome package on page 1, it said, by the way, the Shalansky family, as you already know, is treating you to this amazing experience at this glorious hotel. Your accommodations have already been taken care of. And to ensure you have a great time, the Shalansky family is also going to put a $200 credit on your room. All the incidentals that you charge over the next 4 days go on your credit card, but we're going to cover the first $200. So maybe that's a spa excursion, maybe that's a ski rental, maybe that's ice skating, maybe that's just going out to dinner as a family. We're going to cover that for you. And then anything over that amount is your expense. Now, why did I do that? Well, my driving value that gets me going is gratitude. So when somebody comes up to me and says, hey, do I have to pay for my own breakfast or are you paying for it? That's a very simple, honest question, but it rubs me on the whole gratitude spectrum. It makes me feel like you're not grateful for the entire weekend that we put together for you because now you want to know if I'm going to buy you a $7 plate of oatmeal. Now, that's probably not what they were trying to imply, but that is how I filter it because our words matter. And when we speak them, we're responsible for what's spoken. But that audience, whoever you spoke them to, now gets to take those words and really filter or take them as they want to. So when I hear that, I don't like it. So now I avoid it entirely. And I say, hey, I'm going to put a $200 credit on your room. Use it as you wish. If you want to treat yourself to going to do an activity that you wouldn't otherwise do, fantastic. If you want that $7 oatmeal and it's not covered in our normal team training or breakfast or luncheons that we do, knock yourself out. Don't tell me about it. Just say thank you. And so this is something that my executive assistant helps safeguard me against. And so one of the things that she does is she filters through that. She says, hey, in order for this to be really successful for everyone, let's spell out what we're covering and what we're not covering. And so we'll have it in those two different categories. So nobody's coming up to me to complain during an event. That's important to me. That's good value for me. So that EA is really in charge of making sure that the expected and the unexpected events are happening for me. And so when I host things like this, and I'm mentioning the team retreat, but I also do client entertaining events. I'm going to have a wine tasting that she's now preparing for in April. And wine tastings are a beautiful way to do a low-key social event because when you give out an invitation to a client to a wine event, guess what? They want to bring someone or they're going to talk to somebody about it. It's also really inexpensive to host wine tasting events. So they're great marketing tools. So she will dress up the invitations and she will make sure that I have catering and everything that I need for that night to be a success. She will register everyone. She will track everyone. And when I send out invitations, even though I'm going to be clients and prospects, I'll still invite some neighbors. And even though they're my neighbors, I will have them all RSVP to her, to the executive assistant. So most of the time when I organize events like this, people aren't coming to me, they're going to her. This alleviates some of my stress for the event and that I'm not trying to answer little questions and that also, I might not have all the details for because I've handed them over to her and she's doing a rock star job. So if somebody comes to me and says, hey, what are you serving that night? What do your appetizers look like? I'm probably not going to know until 2 weeks before the event when her and I have sat down and selected the menu choices. Just like when we did our corporate event, she put together all of the menus. She gave me her top selections and I came in and said, yes, yes, no, change this. I don't want that, but add this. And then she goes forth and takes care of those things and gets all those details in place. So it's a tremendous amount of weight that's lifted off of me to have to host those events because she takes care of the anticipated and the unanticipated needs. What is an example of an unanticipated need? Well, we had 44 people show up at this event, and 7 of them were children under the age of 13. Guess what she went out and got? Giant coloring sheets and crayons. She also brought a boom box, which actually dates me more than it does her, a portable speaker, so that everyone could listen to music as well when the evening events were happening. And so those unanticipated needs, so now we don't have children that had in occupation. Now they had things that they wanted to do. They had little games that they could play and they could celebrate and be with each other, which made it that much more easier for the parents to socialize. Now, in addition, one thing that she does is she shows up to an event an hour before I do. So an hour before I ever showed up to the event, she was making sure everything was top notch. Even though she had gone the night before and made sure the room was set up a particular way, things can happen. I've hosted many seminars where we go in the day before, make sure everything is 100%, that we can just roll up and show up the next morning and get things knocked out. And the AV equipment and the janitorial staff got the room mixed up, and they took apart all of the tables and all of the chairs. And then 45 minutes prior to an event, I'm physically hauling in heels chairs for enough people for 50 people to sit down at. So these things happen, especially when you're dealing with hotel staff or catering staff, or especially catering staff. I always have catering items show up 2 hours before an event because I know that they're going to be late. I know they're going to have some kind of crisis. And the worst thing in my mind in a world to do is have everyone together for a party and there's nothing to eat and there's nothing to drink. It's awful. So I always have these little rules, and I'm making sure that my executive assistant is following up with those individuals so that when I show up, does this mean I'm 100% stress-free? No, it didn't even happen at the retreat. She had the room set up 100%. They switched the tables around. It created where the speaker was going to get up. Everyone was going to be walking by them to refill their coffee, their drinks, get food, and then go out to the restroom. That's a terrible position for a speaker to be in. So I wanted the room flipped around in the U shape. And so we were physically moving tables and physically moving chairs and getting those things done up the morning of. Now, here's how I know my executive assistant was being an absolute rock star about this event, is that she showed up an hour before and I was coming up the hotel 4A and I saw a man with a cart and a large carafe of coffee. And I said, any chance you're headed to that portage room? And he said, yes. Good morning. Are you Amanda? And I said, no, she's my amazing assistant. And he said, oh, you must be Jamie. She has been wonderful to work with. She told me exactly how you wanted everything, and we're really going to rise to the occasion and make sure we knock it out of the park for you. So she already set the tone of my expectations prior to me ever arriving. Now, that's not something she did an hour before the event. That's something she did 4 months before the event because she's having all the point of contact. She's negotiating my contract. She's negotiating the rooms. She's getting the storage set up for the venue. She's doing all of those things that I need done, which means that she's also representing me as the executive and my company as the brand. And this part is very critical because if you have somebody that's really great at administrative tasks, but they're not client facing, they're not public facing, they're not somebody you would want a prospect to have an interaction with, this does not make a good executive assistant. This could make a good virtual assistant. This does not make a good executive assistant because that executive assistant is carrying forth your reputation and your brand. So by the time that you're meeting vendors, by this time that you're meeting people in your network, a tone has already been set and a precedence for how you like things to be done.
Belay has been helping busy leaders with their staffing solutions for over a decade. Belay intentionally pairs clients with US-based virtual assistants and accounting specialists. You know the great leaders don't do anything alone, so get the support you need with Belay. To help you get started, Belay is offering a free download of their CEO's book, Rise Up and Lead Well: How Leveraging an Assistant Will Change Your Life and Maximize Your Time. Just text RIA to 55123 to get your free copy today.
Now, leading up to this event, I'm not being needled to death with questions. Rather, I have a standing executive assistant meeting every single week, and we keep track of every single line item. She hits me with the headlines, things I need to be aware of this week that's going to be happening in my household. Maybe somebody's coming to cut down a tree. Maybe I've got a mechanic showing up. Whatever that headline is, she gives me a reminder about like, oh, by the way, don't forget Mother's Day is coming up. I'll need some gift ideas for your mom. And then we go into the issues and the details. And those are the things that she wants to bring my decision making skills into. So issues that we identify and then we solve. So we track the identification numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Started, not started, completed. That way I can filter all the completed stuff out of my spreadsheet. And then what is the issue? What is her suggestion of the decision? And then what is my decision? And so I give her a lot of authority to make decisions because she knows my skill set. She knows my expectations a lot. This is something you're going to have to set with a new person. It's not something that they will just know. And this comes from me articulating it over and over again. And then also telling her when she's wrong. We spent a lot of time, and it became a joke, because she would give me something that I knew was not at her best. And that is one of my questions I often ask my team members. Is this your best? Before you ask me to look at something, is this your best? And so if they come in, they hand me a portfolio or a sheet of paper or anything on the computer, and they say, hey, can I get your input? I will close or turn over whatever it is. So I haven't seen it yet. And I say, absolutely, I'm happy to provide you with feedback. Is this your best? Before I do. And then that puts them in the position of recognizing if they were lazy or sloppy, or if it was still in draft format, or if they are like, yeah, absolutely, this is my best. And now I need your help. Now I need your guidance. Now I need you to help me level it up one notch. And that's 100% okay, because rarely ever does something come across my purview on my desk that I don't want to tweak, change, or ask somebody if they want to do it a little bit better. That's just how I am. My go-to default is to reinvent the wheel. I have to filter it myself from doing that and say, okay, is this good enough? Or am I just in a quest of perfection that's never going to get there? So if I have something on my list, she has already identified it, discussed it, and come up with some type of solution. Now, her solution might not be the answer I go with. Oftentimes it's not, but she's problem solving. She's putting herself in the position of being the problem solver. And so that is very resourceful for me, because a lot of what your executive assistant, whether they're an EA or VA, a virtual assistant, they're going to be doing a ton of research and reporting of information. So they need to have the skill set and the mind mentality to really learn how to research topics and gather all of the pertinent information and summarize it for you. If somebody comes to me and says, hey, I don't know how to solve X, or I can't find Y, and I can Google it in 5 seconds and find the answer, you failed. You didn't do your job. What you did was got sloppy and lazy and used me as a crutch because you knew I knew the answer. So, and this goes from our financial advisors too. If you come to me and say, I can't find the answer, how do I do this? And you've already done the research, cool, let's figure it out together. But if you come to me and say, hey, I don't know what the calculation for this is, and you didn't spend 20 seconds on a keyboard Googling it to find the answer, and I do, you're in the hot seat, because you got lazy and now you're abusing my knowledge and you're abusing my time and you're using me as a crutch. So my executive assistant or virtual assistant, whichever one you're going for, needs to be able to research, extrapolate the important information, put it in bullet points, and give me the bottom line up front. I use this a lot with my executives. It comes from the military, so especially if they have a military background, bottom line up front. Here's the top thing that I need you to pay attention to, and then the supportive information. This helps me be able to make quick decisions, because when I see the bottom line up front, sometimes I don't need the supporting context. Sometimes I can just make an immediate decision. But sometimes those questions come up and I say, okay, well, hold on, let me make sure I don't have this out of context. What else were you talking about? And so they began to filter that for me by communicating in the format that I've given them. Now, however you choose to communicate with your team member, an executive assistant and virtual assistant, is exactly how you will get communication back. What starts in the beginning lasts until the end. And so we've kind of talked about this before. If you remember me talking to you about team members and communication, where I meet with a lot of financial advisors that say, my gosh, whenever I'm out of the office, my office just calls me all the time. Great. Put it to voicemail. Put it to voicemail and stop being the crutch for them not to problem solve. Create a communication policy that empowers them to problem solve first and then escalate to you, then come to you when they really need your advice. So this means if I'm sloppy and I just randomly text my EA exactly what I'm thinking or what I want done, guess how she's going to respond to me about that task? She's not going to copy and paste it and put it over into our format on our spreadsheet that we just talked about. No, she's going to respond right back via text to me, even though I've told her not to, because what I started is how it ends. If I start that communication, it ends that way. So oftentimes, in order to decrease anxiety for a lot of my team members, because I don't want them to always feel like they're quote unquote on, I will not text them work stuff. I will only send it via chat. I only text or call them if it's an emergency or it's personal. That's it. That is the only reasons I do the work. Otherwise, it goes inside of our chat forum, which is an instant messaging. And then when they're working, they get to it. And that's what's important to me about controlling how I give them information, because that's how I want them to give it back to me. And then if I want something done, I put it into my spreadsheet, and that way I can track it and make sure that I've included all of the information for them to begin working on that project successfully. All right. So other things that my EA really helps me with is inbox and schedule management. I'm going 100 miles an hour mentally all of the time. I love to think big thoughts. I love to have big conversations. If you ever meet me at a conference, I would love to chat with you, but I'm not a chit chat person. I do not have idle chit chat about the weather. I can't stand it. I don't want to do it. Unless we're in the thralls of some glorious storm, I don't want to talk to you about the weather. And so I want to have big conversations. And sometimes that means mentally I'm all over the place and checking in, checking out. And that is why I'm very dependent on my schedule to tell me where I'm supposed to be, with who I'm supposed to be there with, and what I am supposed to be doing. And so my EA, when she meets anyone else, she says, listen, basically I have Jamie's whole life. And that's not a joke. She has my whole life. She has it all organized. When am I supposed to drop the dog off at school? When am I supposed to be there for my first appointment? When am I having a dinner event? When is my wine tasting and client event? She has all of those things organized. She coordinates those projects. She does some book travel and expense reporting for me. So right now, this week, as we wound down our retreat, she's going through and auditing all of the expenses, because there's all the things we budgeted and planned for. And then there's the things that come up when you're at the resort that you didn't plan for. And so I want her to go back and I want her to give me a really great budget. After we do any type of event, after we do any type of surge or training or client event or seminar or retreat, like what I'm just talking about, we do an after action report. And after action says good, bad, and ugly. Next time we want to do this. Like, for example, we had a new team member and I said, hey, listen, anytime you have two Shelanskys in a room, a 3M giant notepad must materialize. Those are the rules. And so I also, she anticipated that if we had that giant 3M pad, we would also need markers for that. So she grabbed fat Sharpies and thin Mr. Sketch markers. I don't like thin Mr. Sketch markers. I can't read it. Nobody can read it across the room. I like the big, fat, smelly ones. I don't like big, fat Sharpies, because when we put these 3M pads all over an Airbnb, hotel room, conference room, etc., they have a chance to bleed on the wall. And I really don't want that experience. And I don't want to have to double sheet stuff. So just give me a good old fashioned red cherry smelling Mr. Sketch marker and let's go to town. So on my after action report, I'm going to have that down. I want the fat Mr. Sketch markers, not the thin ones. Don't bring them. I want one fat Sharpie in every event bag that I have, but I don't need 12 fat Sharpies. That's a waste of time to gather those and put them together. So she's going to go back and she's going to tell me all of the expenses for the retreat. She's going to itemize it by person. And then she's also going to tell me how much it was for each category. And then she's going to give me her recommendations on how we decrease that budget next time, or if we went under, what we we could do to enhance the experience. And so she'll come back to me with all of that information. And now I have something that I can make solid recommendations for next year. Now, one of the things that we do as an advisory office is we bucket our finances. And what that means, I'm not talking about our investment bucket models. Well, that's not what this means. This is bank accounts. And so for every single team member in our office, we allocate a certain percentage towards team development and personal development. And so I will divide that by 12 and I'll treat it like a bill, and it goes directly into a professional development, team development bank account. That's how I keep it organized. So if I went over budget on this event and we don't have enough money in that account, guess who gets to pay for it? Me, as the event organizer, because I'm the one that wasn't tracking, I'm the one that wasn't watching, and I'm the one that was telling people to do things we didn't have enough money for. So this is one of the things, especially if you live in an enterprise office, but if you are a solo practitioner and you want to start doing stuff like this, you have to give it a place to live. You know, we're really big on allocating your own money towards professional development. If you're going to onboard an executive assistant, virtual assistant, an operations person, or relationship manager, you have to also allocate those funds towards their development too. I like to treat this like a bill. Every single month, I put money in that account. The very worst thing that could happen is I have a surplus. I had that happen in 2020. We had a big pool of money from 2019 allocated in the account for all of our team members to use professional development. All the professional development went online, and it was like 75% off versus what it was like for them to go to conferences. So I ended up with a lot more money in the professional development account. What a terrible problem for me to have. All right, when you're selecting your virtual assistant or executive assistant, here's the next really big category. They have to be a person who values privacy and confidentiality, because your executive assistant and your virtual assistant are going to know habits and lifestyle choices and preferences that you probably wouldn't go around your church congregation sharing with everyone. So this is somebody that you want to keep really close to the vest, and they want to know these details, but they don't get to share these details with everyone. And so this is the difference between telling somebody like, hey, absolutely, I would love to schedule that for you. Micah is out of town. Jamie is out of town. Floyd is out of town during those dates, but we could do these dates instead, versus Micah's at a gun shooting class. Floyd is RVing around Africa, and Jamie took off to the spa with her girlfriends for a few days. So you want an executive assistant or a virtual assistant who knows the appropriate level of sharing your information. They keep a lot of it confidential. They keep a lot of it private. They share on a need to know basis. Likewise, I got this question in from somebody. They say, do I give my executive assistant the credit card? Yes, I do give her my corporate credit card for when we need to do SAI events. I give her my self-employed credit card, and then she has my personal one. Now, she doesn't know what transactions are supposed to go on which card. I have to be the one to tell her. Now, most of the time, she'll be able to decipher that and say, hey, listen, this seems like it's a household expense. I'm going to put it on card ending in X, Y, and Z. And I'll say, actually, that's for this business event we have going on, put it on that one. So she'll always check in with me. For the most part, she knows, but I want to make sure it's super, super clear, because what I discovered while I was in Hawaii this year was I had thousands of dollars on my personal card for printers. I thought my credit card got hijacked, and she did not make the purchase, but somebody in the team did, in which it was tied to the Amazon account. And so we got it corrected. But luckily I caught that right away to say, why am I buying thousands of dollars of printers? What is happening? So I am a huge advocate of getting an executive assistant or virtual assistant in place for your life. If you're thinking, I don't really know what I would give that person, trust me, start giving them all the things you don't absolutely have to do and no one else can go and do. And their list will grow and grow and grow by their capability. All right, TPR Nation, you know that we are 100% about action items. So as we wrap up our conversation about executive assistants and virtual assistants, let's go through those action items. One, right now, you need to go and look at different resources for hiring an executive assistant, hiring a virtual assistant. If you do not know one, if you do not have one, email us at lifestyle@theperfectria, and we will make a recommendation of where and how you can go find these people. There's some great services online that do a lot of the screening for it. They get a lot of intuitive information from you about what you need in a virtual assistant, and then they go resource that person for you based on that skill set. So if you don't have one, let's get you one. Email in lifestyle@theperfectria.com. We'll point you towards our favorite resources. 2, research and reporting. So I want you to make sure that you have that communication policy in place. How do you like to have information given back to you? Spend 10 minutes and come up with a template that they can use to give you information the way that you like to receive it. Do it just like it was letterhead. Great. When you open this up, this is what this document looks like. It has bottom line up front, supportive information, key conclusions, key decisions that you need to make. All right. And then 3rd, action item. What does the rest of this year look like? How many client events, how many prospecting events do you have scheduled? If you don't already have them on the calendar, you're probably behind the curve, but get them going, get them started. I share with you a wine tasting. Last Christmas, I shared with my good friend Paula Harris on the East Coast. She's a phenomenal advisor that I love to bring in a pastry chef around Christmas time and host a cooking class on how to make some type of dessert. It's really inexpensive to do, and it is high value. It is so tremendous. People love getting together, especially during those holiday times and doing things. So I like to do an event at least once a quarter. That's a great way to network. It's a great way to prospect, but I'm only doing events I like to do. I did a cooking class because I enjoy cooking. I didn't do a gun shooting class because I have a very quick temper and I'm very clumsy. All right, TPR Nation, get those dates on the calendar. When you hire an executive assistant and you're giving them the template that they want, that you want to be communicated with, then let them go to town and plan all of those details. After you have your planning strategy call, you need to articulate exactly what you want the goal of that night to be and how you want it to look like. TPR Nation, this has been an episode of Worlds to Conquer. I'm Jamie Shalansky. Go find people who share your values and change the world.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA